The crowd buzzed with anticipation, their energy palpable as they filled the seats at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. It was March 13, 2021, a date etched in the memory of MMA fans worldwide. The night promised to be unforgettable, with the spotlight fixed on one of the most intriguing fighters in the welterweight division. But the story we're diving into tonight isn't just about that one date. It's about grit, raw talent, and the untamed fire that defines every fighter who steps into the octagon. In this chapter, the focus shifts to two warriors whose paths crossed in ways that forever changed their careers. On one side, Khamzat Chimaev, a rising star whose meteoric rise had already sent shockwaves through the UFC. He was a man with an aura of invincibility, having bulldozed through his opponents with a ferocity rarely seen in the sport. On the other side, Li the Leech Jingliang, a seasoned fighter from China, known for his resilience and devastating striking power. Their meeting was inevitable, a collision of two contrasting styles and stories. But before their iconic clash, another moment shaped the journey of this narrative, a moment that left fans and fighters alike questioning the cruel unpredictability of combat sports. Earlier that evening in Las Vegas, Khamzat Chimaev wasn't in the spotlight, but his name was already gaining traction among die-hard UFC fans. Meanwhile, Leon Edwards, a top contender in the welterweight division, was set to face Chimaev in what promised to be an explosive battle of skill and determination. Fate, however, had other plans. The highly anticipated fight was disrupted in round 3, when Edwards accidentally poked Chimaev in the eye, a seemingly small but catastrophic moment. The referee had no choice but to call the bout a no contest, and the disappointment was palpable. What could have been a defining moment for both fighters ended abruptly, leaving a void in their respective careers. For Chimaev, the night wasn't about the result, but about what came next. As the dust settled, questions lingered. Could this rising phenom recover from the frustrating setback? Could he channel that unrealized energy into something even greater? It was a pivotal turning point for Chimaev, one that would test his mental and physical fortitude in ways he hadn't yet experienced. This incident wasn't just a hiccup in his career, it became the fire that fueled his comeback. And when he did return, the world took notice. Across the globe, fans debated whether Khamzat Chimaev was truly the next big thing. Some admired his relentless drive and undeniable talent, while others remained skeptical, wondering if his hype outweighed his actual capabilities. But for Chimaev, there was no time for doubts. He wasn't just fighting to prove something to his fans or critics, he was fighting to prove something to himself. And it was this relentless pursuit of greatness that set the stage for his unforgettable showdown with Li Jingliang. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before their paths collided, Chimaev's rise continued to be a subject of fascination. His ability to dominate opponents with precision and power earned him a reputation as a fighter to watch. Yet, there was always an air of mystery around him. Who was this man who seemed to revel in chaos, thriving in the moments when most fighters faltered? The more fans learned about him, the more intrigued they became. And then there was Li Jingliang, a fighter who had built his career on determination and heart. The Leech wasn't someone to be underestimated, and he thrived on being the underdog. For every setback he'd faced, there was a triumphant comeback, a reminder of his unyielding spirit. Li wasn't just another fighter in the division. He was a force to be reckoned with, someone who could derail even the most promising careers if given the chance. When their bout was announced, the MMA world erupted. Fans speculated on every aspect of the fight, Would Chimaev's grappling prowess overwhelm Lai's striking? Could Lee weather the storm and expose any weaknesses in Chimaev's seemingly invincible armor? The hype was real, and the stakes were high. As the story unfolds, the weight of this moment becomes clear. For Chimaev, it wasn't just another fight. It was a chance to silence the doubters, to prove that his rapid rise was no fluke. For Lai, it was an opportunity to claim his place among the elite, to show the world that he could take on anyone and come out victorious. These weren't just two fighters stepping into the octagon. They were two men with everything to gain and even more to lose. And so, the stage was set. The lights, the cameras, the roaring crowd, all of it building toward the moment when these two warriors would finally collide. But what happened next? That's a story worth waiting for. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into one of the most electrifying matchups in UFC history and explore the defining moments that made this fight an instant classic. The story of Khamzat Chimaev and Li Jingliang didn't begin in the octagon that night. It was forged in the trials and sacrifices that shaped their journeys to the UFC. Every punch, every takedown, every grueling training session, they were all pieces of a larger puzzle, leading to this pivotal clash of styles, wills, and ambition. To truly understand the stakes, we have to go back, tracing the paths that brought these two warriors to that electric moment in Las Vegas. For Khamzat Chimaev, fighting was more than just a career, it was a lifeline. Born in Chechnya, a region marked by conflict and resilience, Chimaev grew up surrounded by hardship. Moving to Sweden as a teenager with his family offered a chance at a better life, but the hunger to prove himself never faded. Wrestling became his sanctuary, a way to channel his restless energy into something constructive. The discipline, the grind, and the constant pursuit of excellence molded him into a fierce competitor. But Khamzat's ambitions extended far beyond wrestling mats. When he transitioned to MMA, it was as if all the pieces clicked into place. He wasn't just good, he was exceptional. His early fights were a blur of dominance, leaving opponents overwhelmed and fans stunned. It wasn't just that he won, it was how he won. He seemed almost unstoppable, finishing fights in minutes, sometimes seconds, and walking away barely touched. The aura around him began to grow, and with every victory, the whispers grew louder. Could this be the next great UFC champion? Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Li Jingliang was carving out his own path. Born in Xinjiang, China, Li didn't come from a privileged background. Like Khamzat, his journey into MMA was fueled by a desire to break free from his circumstances and make a name for himself. He began as a wrestler, much like his eventual opponent, but it was his striking that set him apart. Over time, he developed a style that combined precision and power, earning him a reputation as one of the most dangerous strikers in the welterweight division. Lai's rise wasn't as meteoric as Khamzat's. It was a slower burn, a testament to his grit and perseverance. He faced setbacks along the way, including tough losses that could have broken a lesser fighter. But each time, he came back stronger, more determined than ever to prove his worth. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for his family, his team, and the growing community of MMA fans in China who saw him as a symbol of hope and pride. When their fight was announced, the contrast between these two fighters couldn't have been more striking. On paper, Khamzat's undefeated record and string of dominant performances made him the favorite. But Li wasn't intimidated. If anything, he thrived in situations where the odds were stacked against him. This wasn't just another fight for him. It was an opportunity to shock the world and cement his legacy as one of the toughest fighters in the sport. As the weeks leading up to the fight passed, The tension between these two warriors began to build. Both fighters were laser-focused during their training camps, each preparing for the unique challenges the other posed. For Khamzat, it was about maintaining his aura of invincibility. He trained like a man possessed, sparring with partners who pushed him to his limits and drilling endlessly to perfect his already formidable grappling and striking. Every session was a reminder of the stakes. This fight wasn't just about winning. It was about sending a message to the entire division. Lai, on the other hand, approached his camp with the quiet confidence of a veteran who had been through the fire before. He knew he wasn't the favorite, but that didn't bother him. If anything, it fueled him. He worked tirelessly on his takedown defense, knowing that Khamzat would try to drag him to the ground. At the same time, he sharpened his striking, preparing to capitalize on any openings that might come his way. For Lai, this fight was about proving that experience and heart could overcome raw talent. Outside the gym, the buzz around the fight reached a fever pitch. Fans and analysts dissected every aspect of the matchup, from Khamzat's grappling dominance to Li's knockout power. The debates were endless. Could Khamzat handle someone as seasoned as Lai? Would Lai's experience be enough to counter Khamzat's relentless pace? Everyone had an opinion, but no one could predict with certainty how the fight would unfold. As fight night approached, the pressure mounted. The weigh-ins were a spectacle in themselves, with both fighters making weight and facing off for the cameras. Khamzat's intense stare seemed to bore into Lai, but the Chinese fighter didn't flinch. He met Khamzat's gaze with a steely determination, silently promising that he wouldn't go down without a fight. The tension was electric, a preview of the storm that was about to hit the octagon. Behind the scenes, both fighters dealt with the mental and emotional toll of the moment. For Khamzat, the weight of expectations was immense. He wasn't just fighting to win, he was fighting to uphold the image of invincibility that had been built around him. One misstep, and the narrative could change in an instant. Li, on the other hand, carried the hopes of an entire nation on his shoulders. He knew that a victory would resonate far beyond the octagon, inspiring countless fans back home. And then the night arrived. The lights of the UFC apex shone brightly as the fighters made their way to the cage. Khamzat walked out first, his face a mask of focus and intensity. The crowd erupted as he stepped into the octagon, the anticipation reaching a boiling point. Moments later, Li followed, his expression calm but resolute. He knew he was the underdog, but he also knew he had the tools to pull off the upset. As the announcer introduced the fighters, the atmosphere was electric. Fans watching from around the world held their breath, knowing they were about to witness something special. The tension was almost unbearable, the kind that makes time feel like it's standing still. But for Khamzat and Lai, the wait was over. They were ready to put everything on the line, ready to prove who truly belonged at the top of the welterweight division. The referee gave his final instructions, and the fighters touched gloves a brief moment of respect before the chaos. The crowd roared as the opening bell rang, and just like that, the fight was underway. But what happened in those moments? How did the clash of wills and skills play out in the octagon? That story will unravel in the next chapter. Stay with us as we continue to explore this epic encounter, one that would leave an indelible mark on the history of MMA. The sound of the opening bell reverberated through the arena, signaling the beginning of a battle that had the entire MMA world holding its breath. Khamzat Chimaev and Li Jingliang circled each other, their eyes locked, their bodies tense with anticipation. In that moment, nothing else mattered. It was just them, the octagon, and the test of who could impose their will first. From the outset, Khamzat moved with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. He wasted no time, stepping forward with the confidence of a man who knew exactly what he wanted to do. His plan was clear: close the distance, get Lee to the ground, and dominate with the relentless pressure that had become his trademark. Every movement he made was calculated, his focus razor sharp. This wasn't just a fight for him. It was a statement, a chance to remind the world why his name carried so much weight. Lee, however, was no stranger to pressure. He'd been in tough situations before, and he wasn't about to be overwhelmed. As Khamzat pushed forward, Lee responded with sharp jabs and quick footwork, trying to keep his opponent at bay. He knew the danger of letting Khamzat get too close, and every strike he threw was aimed at creating just enough space to breathe. But Khamzat wasn't giving him any room to settle. The Chechen-Swedish fighter was like a storm, constantly advancing, his presence suffocating. The first real clash came when Khamzat shot for a takedown. It was explosive, fast, and powerful, the kind of move that had left so many of his previous opponents helpless. But Lee was ready. He sprawled, using his hips and strength to resist the takedown, showing the hours of preparation he'd put into defending against Khamzat's grappling. For a moment, it looked like Lee might escape, but Khamzat adjusted, driving through with sheer determination. The crowd roared as the fighters grappled against the cage, each man fighting for control. On the ground, Khamzat's dominance became apparent. His strength, his technique, his unrelenting pace, it was overwhelming. He worked methodically, transitioning positions and landing strikes with precision. Lee, to his credit, refused to go quietly. He scrambled, defended, and looked for opportunities to escape, his grit and resilience on full display. But Khamzat was relentless. He didn't give Lee a second to rest, pouring on the pressure and forcing him to stay on the defensive. Outside the cage, the tension was palpable. The commentators marveled at Khamzat's control, comparing his performance to the greats of the sport. Yet, there was an underlying question. Could he maintain this pace? Lee, known for his durability and ability to weather storms, was still very much in the fight. And as the seconds ticked by, fans began to wonder what would happen if Khamzat couldn't finish him early. In the corner, between rounds, the atmosphere was intense. Khamzat's team urged him to stay aggressive, to keep pushing the pace and not let Lee find any momentum. Across the cage, Lee's coaches reminded him to stay patient, to look for openings, and to believe in his ability to turn the tide. Both fighters came out for the next round with renewed purpose, their eyes blazing with determination. As the fight continued, the dynamics began to shift. Khamzat's relentless pace started to show cracks, not weaknesses, but signs that even he was human. His breathing grew heavier, his movements slightly less sharp. Lee, sensing the opportunity, began to push back. He threw heavier strikes, testing Khamzat's defense and forcing him to expend more energy. The balance of power in the fight seemed to teeter, creating an edge-of-your-seat atmosphere that had fans glued to their screens. It wasn't just a physical battle, it was mental as well. Both fighters were testing each other's resolve, trying to break the other's will. For Khamzat, it was about proving that he could handle adversity, that he could go beyond the early finishes and still dominate. For Lee, it was about surviving the storm and showing that heart and experience could overcome raw talent. Every exchange, every scramble, every strike added another layer to the drama unfolding in the octagon. Crowds' reactions mirrored the ebb and flow of the fight. Gasps and cheers erupted with every big moment, each fan rooting for their favorite to seize control. The stakes felt higher with every passing second. Khamzat's invincibility was being tested, while Lee's resilience continued to shine through. Both men were leaving everything they had in the cage, their performances a testament to the warrior spirit that defines the sport. As the final moments of the fight loomed, the suspense reached its peak. Neither fighter had given an inch, and the question of who would emerge victorious hung heavy in the air. Khamzat's relentless pressure versus Lee's unyielding heart. It was a clash of forces that seemed destined for a dramatic conclusion. The energy in the arena was electric, the kind of atmosphere that only the most epic fights can create. But the story doesn't end here. What happened in those final moments? Did Khamzat's dominance prevail, or did Lee find a way to turn the tables? The answers lie ahead, waiting to be revealed in a conclusion that would leave fans talking for years. Stay tuned as we uncover the outcome of this unforgettable battle and the impact it had on the careers of these two incredible fighters. The octagon had turned into a cauldron of intensity, with every second feeling like an eternity. Both Khamzat Chimaev and Li Jingliang were deep in the trenches of a battle that was testing their limits in ways neither had experienced before. The air inside the UFC apex was electric, charged with anticipation and uncertainty. Fans watching around the world leaned closer to their screens, unable to look away from the drama unfolding before them. Khamzat's relentless pace, which had been his greatest weapon, was now being tested against Lee's resilience. He kept pressing forward, his every move still carrying the ferocity that had defined his career. But with each step, it became evident that this was different from his previous fights. Lee wasn't crumbling. He wasn't folding under the pressure. Instead, he was digging in, meeting Khamzat's intensity with a calm defiance that seemed to say, "I'm not going anywhere." The crowd roared as Lee found moments to push back. Crisp right hand landed clean, snapping Khamzat's head back and drawing gasps from those watching. It wasn't enough to stop the forward march, but it was a reminder that Lee was still very much in the fight. Each time Khamzat closed the distance, Lee made him pay with short punches and well-placed knees, forcing the Chechen fighter to think twice before diving in recklessly. In the grappling exchanges, Khamzat's strength and technique were undeniable. He secured takedowns with sheer determination, driving Lee to the canvas with a force that echoed through the arena. But Lee refused to stay down. He scrambled, bridged, and used every ounce of his experience to get back to his feet. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. The crowd erupted every time he escaped, their cheers a testament to the respect they had for his unbreakable spirit. As the minutes ticked by, the fight became a war of attrition. Both fighters were now operating on pure willpower, their bodies pushed to the brink. Khamzat's breaths came heavier, his once crisp movements slightly labored. Lee, bloodied but unbowed, kept moving forward, his eyes locked on his opponent. There was no quit in either man, and it was clear that this fight would come down to who wanted it more. The tension was unbearable. Every strike, every scramble, every moment of hesitation carried the weight of what was at stake. For Khamzat, this was about solidifying his status as the most feared prospect in the division. A victory here would keep his undefeated streak alive and propel him closer to title contention. For Lee, it was about proving that experience and heart could overcome the hype. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for every underdog who had ever been doubted. The crowd's energy matched the intensity inside the cage. Every exchange was met with roars, gasps, and the constant hum of excitement. The commentators were on the edge of their seats, their voices rising with each significant moment. The fight had become more than just a contest. It was a spectacle, a story of two warriors pushing each other to their absolute limits. In the final moments of the round, Khamzat managed to secure another takedown, slamming Lee to the canvas with authority. But even there, Lee refused to break. He defended intelligently, blocking strikes and looking for opportunities to reverse the position. Khamzat, sensing the urgency, poured everything he had into maintaining control, his fists raining down in bursts of power. The crowd erupted again, the sound reverberating through the building like thunder. As the horn sounded, signaling the end of the round, both fighters rose slowly, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. The intensity in their eyes hadn't dimmed. If anything, it had grown stronger. They returned to their corners, their teams frantically offering instructions and encouragement. The final round loomed, and with it, the promise of a climactic conclusion that would determine everything. The anticipation was at its peak. Everyone watching knew that the next few minutes would define not just the fight, but the trajectories of two remarkable careers. Would Khamzat's dominance prevail, or would Lee's unyielding heart prove too much to overcome? The answer was just out of reach, tantalizingly close yet shrouded in uncertainty. The stage was set for an unforgettable finish, and no one could predict what would happen next. The fighters stood at their corners, both of them breathing heavily but refusing to let the exhaustion show. This was the point where everything was on the line. Khamzat Chimaev's unbeaten aura hung by a thread, and Li Jingliang's chance to pull off a monumental upset was within his grasp. The energy in the building was almost tangible, the kind of tension that only happens in fights where careers and legacies are being defined. The final round was about to begin, and no one knew what would happen next. The referee signaled them to fight, and they met in the center of the octagon, both men digging deep into reserves of energy they didn't even know they had. Khamzat came forward again, his aggressive style unwavering. His movement still carried purpose, but there was something different this time. Lee had adapted, reading Khamzat's timing and anticipating his next moves. Each time Khamzat lunged, Lee countered with precision, landing strikes that forced Khamzat to reset. Then came the twist no one saw coming. As Khamzat pushed for a takedown, Lee sprawled expertly, stuffing the attempt and reversing the position with a burst of energy. The crowd erupted as Lee found himself on top for the first time in the fight. This was unfamiliar territory for Khamzat, who had always been the one in control on the ground. The tables had turned, and now Lee had the chance to show that he wasn't just surviving, he could dominate too. Lee wasted no time. He postured up, delivering ground and pound with calculated ferocity. Each strike landed with a thud, the sound reverberating through the arena and adding to the chaos of the moment. Khamzat, who had always seemed invincible, was now the one defending, trying to find a way out from under the barrage. It was a stunning turn of events that left fans on the edge of their seats. But Khamzat wasn't done yet. He weathered the storm, using his grappling instincts to regain control. With a sudden explosion of power, he swept Lee, reversing the position and putting the fight back in his favor. The reversal was so quick, so fluid, that it seemed almost superhuman. Crowd roared again, their cheers creating an almost deafening wave of noise. The stakes felt impossibly high now. Both fighters were running on pure heart, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. Khamzat, knowing he couldn't let the fight slip away, ramped up his aggression. He went for submission attempts, hunting for a finish that would leave no doubt about his dominance. Lee, however, was unshakable. He defended with everything he had, slipping out of holds and refusing to give an inch. Then, as if the universe wanted to test their limits one final time, the pace of the fight somehow escalated. Lee, finding a burst of energy, got back to his feet and began firing combinations that caught Khamzat off guard. The strikes were clean and precise, rocking Khamzat and forcing him to retreat momentarily. The crowd was in a frenzy, the sound of their voices rising and falling with every exchange. The momentum swung back and forth, neither fighter able to secure a definitive advantage. It was a war of wills, a contest where every second felt like it could be the deciding factor. Khamzat's relentless pressure clashed with Lee's indomitable spirit, creating a dynamic that was as unpredictable as it was thrilling. Both men were bleeding, their faces a testament to the battle they were waging, but neither was willing to quit. As the final seconds of the round ticked away, it was clear that something monumental was about to happen. The intensity of the exchanges, the shifts in momentum, and the sheer willpower on display had created an atmosphere unlike anything the sport had seen in recent memory. Question hung in the air: who would find that one moment of brilliance to tip the scales in their favor? The answer remained just out of reach, teasing the audience and setting the stage for an unforgettable climax. The final moments of the fight unfolded like a scene from a movie, every detail heightened by the stakes that had been building throughout. Khamzat Chimaev and Li Jingliang stood in the center of the octagon, their bodies battered, their faces bloodied, but their willpower undiminished. Both men knew that this was their last chance to leave an indelible mark, to give everything they had and cement their place in the sport's history. Khamzat moved forward again, his determination undeterred despite the grueling battle. He feinted, drawing a reaction from Lee, then shot in for a takedown with everything he had left. The timing was perfect, the execution flawless. He drove through Lee, slamming him to the canvas with a force that drew a collective gasp from the crowd. It was the kind of move that defined champions, a moment where sheer will and technical mastery converged. But Lee wasn't done. Even with Khamzat on top, pressing down with relentless pressure, Lee refused to break. He worked tirelessly from his back, attacking with elbows, shifting his hips to create space, and searching for a way to escape. Crowd erupted as Lee, through sheer grit and determination, managed to scramble back to his feet. The cheers were deafening, the energy in the building reaching a fever pitch. Then, in a moment that no one expected, Lee unleashed a spinning back fist that came out of nowhere. The strike was lightning fast, catching Khamzat on the temple and sending him stumbling backward. The crowd roared, the shockwave of the strike reverberating through the arena. Khamzat staggered but didn't fall, his instincts taking over as he immediately shot for another takedown. Lee sprawled, defending with every ounce of energy he had left. Two fighters grappled in a chaotic exchange, each one trying to gain the upper hand. Just when it seemed like the fight might end in a stalemate, Khamzat found a moment of brilliance. In the middle of the scramble, he transitioned seamlessly to take Lee's back. The move was quick, almost too fast to follow, and suddenly Khamzat had the upper hand again. He locked in a rear naked choke, the crowd on their feet as Lee fought desperately to escape. The tension was unbearable, the outcome hanging by a thread. Lee resisted with everything he had, his hands pulling at Khamzat's grip, his body writhing as he tried to break free. For a moment, it seemed like he might succeed. But Khamzat adjusted, his technique razor sharp, and the choke tightened. The arena fell silent, as Lee, unable to fight any longer, tapped. The referee stepped in, and it was over. Khamzat had won. Crowd erupted in cheers, the sound a mix of admiration and relief. Khamzat released the hold and stood, his chest heaving, his arms raised in victory. He had done it. He had passed the toughest test of his career and emerged victorious. But the fight had also shown his vulnerability, proving that even the most dominant fighters could be pushed to their limits. As Khamzat helped Lee to his feet, the two shared a moment of respect. The battle they had just fought wasn't just a fight. It was a testament to the spirit of mixed martial arts. Both men had given everything they had, They had earned each other's respect and the admiration of fans around the world. And then, as the post-fight interviews began, came the twist. Khamzat, still catching his breath, made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the arena. In his thick accent, he declared, "I'll fight anyone, anytime, any weight class." Who's next? It wasn't just bravado, it was a challenge to the entire division. A statement that he wasn't just here to win fights. He was here to dominate the sport. The moment solidified Khamzat's place as a force to be reckoned with, but it also left fans buzzing with questions. Who would step up to face him next? Could anyone stop his rise? And what would Li Jingliang, now tested against one of the best, do to rebuild and come back stronger? The fight had ended, but the stories of both fighters were far from over, leaving fans eagerly anticipating what would come next. As the fight ended and the dust began to settle, the energy in the arena shifted. What had been a chaotic whirlwind of cheers, gasps, and intense focus slowly gave way to a mixture of admiration and reflection. Khamzat Chimaev stood in the center of the octagon, his arms raised high, while Li Jingliang, battered but resolute, nodded with quiet pride as the referee raised Khamzat's hand. The scene was one of triumph and resilience, a snapshot of what makes mixed martial arts so captivating. Khamzat's declaration during the post-fight interview echoed in the minds of fans long after the event was over. His challenge to the division was not just a call-out, it was a statement of intent. The hunger in his voice, the fire in his eyes, left no doubt that he was ready to take on anyone willing to meet him in the octagon. It was a moment that transcended the fight itself, cementing his image as not only a dominant athlete, but also a fearless competitor. For Li Jingliang, the loss was a bittersweet experience. He had entered the fight as the underdog, but he had shown the world that he was more than capable of standing toe-to-toe with one of the most hyped fighters in the UFC. His performance was a testament to his grit, skill, and heart. Even in defeat, he had earned a new level of respect from fans and fellow fighters alike. He left the octagon with his head held high, already thinking about the adjustments he would make and the lessons he had learned. As the event came to an end, social media erupted with reactions. Fans dissected every moment of the fight, from Khamzat's explosive takedowns to Li's moments of defiance. The bout had become an instant classic, a fight that would be replayed and remembered for years to come. Analysts debated what was next for both fighters, with speculation running wild about Khamzat's next opponent and how Li would bounce back. Khamzat, true to his word, wasted no time in setting his sights on the next challenge. Backstage, during interviews, he hinted at wanting to fight a top contender, perhaps even a title eliminator. His confidence was unshakable, but there was also a sense of humility as he acknowledged the toughness of his opponent. "Li is a warrior," he said, his voice steady but filled with genuine respect. "He showed heart. I respect him a lot." It was a side of Khamzat that fans hadn't seen before, and it only made his rising star shine brighter. For Li, the path forward was clear. He returned to his team, ready to review the fight in detail and start the process of rebuilding. His performance against Khamzat had proven that he belonged at the highest level, and he was determined to show that he could grow from the experience. "This is not the end for me," Li said during his post-fight interview. "This is just one chapter. I'll come back stronger." The aftermath of the fight had a ripple effect on the welterweight division. Khamzat's victory only solidified his place as one of the most dangerous fighters in the weight class, and the other top contenders couldn't ignore him any longer. Rumors swirled about potential matchups, with fans clamoring for him to face another top-ranked opponent. every fighter in the division knew that a bout with Khamzat wouldn't just be a fight, it would be a war. Meanwhile, Lee's name was spoken with new reverence. Even in defeat, he had gained fans and respect, his performance serving as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the sport. For every setback, there was an opportunity, and Lee's determination to rise again resonated with fans around the world. As the days turned into weeks, the fight between Khamzat and Lee remained a hot topic. The UFC, always eager to capitalize on momentum, released highlights and behind-the-scenes footage that only added to the narrative. Fans got a glimpse of the fighters' preparation, their mindset going into the fight, and the camaraderie shared afterward. It was a rare insight that made the fight feel even more significant. The narrative surrounding Khamzat and Lee extended beyond the cage. Their fight became a symbol of what makes MMA so special: the unpredictability, the heart, and the sheer willpower required to compete at the highest level. It was a story of two fighters from vastly different backgrounds, united by their passion for the sport and their desire to prove themselves. For Khamzat, the future was as bright as ever. His next fight would undoubtedly be one of the most anticipated in the division, with fans eager to see if he could maintain his meteoric rise. He continued to train relentlessly, his focus unwavering. Every interview, every social media post carried the same message: he was ready for whatever came next. Lee, too, stayed true to his word. He returned to the gym with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to address the gaps in his game and come back stronger. His journey wasn't over, it was simply evolving. Fans rallied behind him, inspired by his resilience and the way he carried himself in the aftermath of the fight. In the end, the fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Li Jingliang wasn't just about the winner and loser. It was about the journey, the challenges, and the moments that make MMA more than just a sport. It was a reminder that in the octagon, anything is possible, and that every fight has the potential to create lasting memories. Both fighters walked away from that night changed, their paths forever linked by the battle they had shared. And for the fans, it was a night they would never forget, a testament to the power of determination, respect, and the unyielding spirit of competition. The fight had ended, but the impact of that night would continue to ripple through the MMA world, leaving a legacy that would be talked about for years to come.